Well, good morning, church. My name is Michael, and I am one of the pastors here. I want to welcome you to our series, For Better or For Worse. I want to give a special shout out to those plugging in online, especially you, Mosaic Church Glendale, for joining us for the first time. Thank you. For better or for worse. We say it, but do we really mean it? Marriage is hard. It can be painful. Sometimes we can feel lost, like it'll never get any better. Sometimes we have great moments that we never want to end, but most days are a series of normal, boring circumstances that we call life. We were promised the fairy tale. We want the happily ever after, but life seems more like Groundhog Day. We believed that we would fall in love like most rom-coms, and despite the difficulties, it would all work out in the end. But life isn't that way. Life is messier than an hour-and-a-half movie. It's more complicated than a Disney fairy tale. Our hope during this series is that we will give you tools along the way that will help you with marriage and with raising kids. And if you're single, don't tune out. Many of the skills and tools that we're teaching will actually help you along the way. Maybe it's in a future relationship. By the end of the series, we hope that we all look at our relationships and say that we are loving each other for better or for worse. This week, we're going to be talking about parenting. Now, before all of you non-parents tune out, I want to ask you a few questions. At this point in time, I want you to raise your hand and keep it raised if this is you. How many of you are in the process of raising kids right now? Nice. Struggle's real, I'm with you. How many of you, keep them raised? How many of you have kids who are already grown? Nice. How many grandparents in the house? Maybe you're, keep them raised. Keep them raised if you already raised your hand. Awesome. How many of you are looking forward to having kids one day? Keep them raised. Keep them raised. Hold on, I'm going to see if I can get all of you. Okay? All right, almost all of you. How many of you know a parent? Oh, you can put them down. You can put them down. That's funny. Hey, if you didn't raise your hand during that, I give you permission to mentally check out of the rest of my message. That's okay. If it makes it easier, you can just pretend that I'm Rod. I did not know that he was going to do this, but this picture basically sums up the most grumpy old man I know, that's Rod. He might. I don't know. Guys, I'm surprised I have a job sometimes. So this topic is so important because if we're honest, parenting, it's pretty tough. It's exhausting. It's aggravating. It's annoying, disgusting, and often thankless. But our kids can be our biggest motivation, our sense of fulfillment, our proudest accomplishments, and our deepest relationships. We protect our children. We work so hard so that they can have a better life. We sacrifice for our children. We would die for our children. When it comes to raising them, though, it can often feel like we're failing. Part of that might be because we don't know what success looks like. A lot of definitions of parental success actually come from our parents. What kind of goals did our parents have for us? And that's something that we do when we parent. We have goals for our children. We all have hopes and we have dreams for our kids. Maybe it's that we hope that our kids will get straight A's so that they can get a scholarship. Maybe we want them to have success in sports. We want them to be the star player of a game or have the game-winning goal. Maybe we just want our kid to be good at some activity like art or dance or music or even video games. Maybe we just want our kid to have similar interests to us. Like, I really hope that my kids never root for the Dallas Cowboys. For some of us, though, we just hope to keep them alive long enough that they can move out and stop eating our food. Honestly, though, when it comes to my personal goals for my kids, I really just hope they end up being well-rounded individuals. But are any of these successes? What does the Bible tell us about parenting? In order to look at this, I'm actually going to look at the opposite of success. I'm going to look at a failure as a parent. And you may be surprised to hear this, that when I read the Bible, I actually see more failures as a parent than successes. And that gives me a little hope. So the person that we're going to be talking about today may be a surprise to some of you, because when we think about this person, he's often referred to as a big success in the Bible. The Bible actually refers to him as one after God's own heart. King David was an incredible hero in the Old Testament, but he was also a failed parent. When David was just a boy, he volunteered to fight a giant to defend the nation of Israel, and he won. He killed lions and bears. He was a mighty warrior. He won many battles, and Israel became feared as a nation. He gained vast amounts of wealth for Israel. He was an expert military tactician, and he was an incredible poet and musician. His words are still used in some of the songs that we sing when we worship God today. By all appearance, he had it all figured out. If I followed David on social media, I would imagine I would think this guy has a perfect life. But there was more to it for David. He had at least 8 wives. Some of them kind of started off in a shaky place. And when you start off with a shaky marriage, that never bodes well for the parenting. The truth is, if you want to improve your parenting, start by improving your marriage. That's a great place to start. Pay attention to all of our marriage sermons. Go back, rewatch them. They're all on YouTube. It's an incredible thing to improve your marriage. About 10 years ago, my wife and I got some great advice. It was the best gift that you can give your child is to love Jesus and love your wife. It says your spouse, feel free to fill in whatever, but love Jesus and love your spouse. That's an incredible thing that you can offer your kid. Now let's jump back to David. His oldest son, Amnon, raped his half-sister Tamar. Absalom killed his brother Amnon because of Tamar, and then Absalom died in a rebellion against his own father. Adonijah launched a rebellion to usurp his father, and then was eventually executed by, you guessed it, another one of David's sons. You can see there's a lot of dysfunction when it comes to David and his sons. But maybe you're thinking, there's probably a couple of bad apples. Maybe David just got a little unlucky. Maybe those sons just were led astray. Well, let's see what the Bible says. 1 Kings 1:6 says, now his father, King David, had never disciplined him at any time, even by asking, why are you doing that? David wasn't there as a father. He was not a present parent. Kids learn what's right and what's wrong from their parents. Their worldview, up to a certain point, is entirely shaped by their parents. So that means that parents have a responsibility to discipline their kids. You will fail if you don't parent on purpose. Now, David didn't fail on purpose. He failed because he didn't have a purpose. I'll say that again. David didn't fail on purpose. He failed because he didn't have a purpose. We are called to be purposeful parents. We're intentional about our jobs. We're careful about where we want to work, who we want to work with, how much we want to make, where our job is. We pray about all of these things when it comes to our jobs. We're careful when we buy a car. What's the warranty like? What are the safety features? Am I going to look cool when I drive it? What about when we travel? Have you ever spent an amount of time trying to figure out where you're going to sit on the airplane? I have. Would you be willing to pay extra money for the extra legroom? I would. Would you be willing to spend an extra 15 minutes discipling your kids? I'm kind of busy. A lot of parents are actually reactive rather than proactive. And I'll say that it's the difference between riding a roller coaster and navigation. I became a dad when I was only 20 years old. And I would say that when the first time I became a dad, I treated it more like riding a roller coaster. You get in, you strap in, and you hang on for dear life. You don't know what's coming next. It's exciting. It can be fun. It can be scary. And you just react. You don't really have a plan. So, some of you may or may not know, I was active duty in the Army for about a decade, a little over a decade. And part of basic training is they teach you how to do land navigation. So what they do is they give you a map, they give you a compass, they give you a pencil and a protractor. And you need to figure out not only where you are, but you need to find different points. And then you need to actually go to those points. This is a requirement in order to graduate basic training. So if I want to succeed at land navigation, I need to start with a plan. I can't just run in some random direction. I won't get where I need to go. So I need to know where I'm starting. I need to know where I'm going. I actually choose the order of the points I'm going to go in before I ever start. Now there's some stuff that's going to come up along the way that I didn't plan for. Like that one time in Georgia when there was a giant swamp in between me and my point that wasn't on the map. And I needed to figure that out. So when that happened, I had to stop and I had to reassess where I was going. I needed to look at what my goal was and then reevaluate my plan to get to where I needed to go. So when I do that, I'm remembering my goal, which brings me to my main 2 points, okay? The 2 things that we need to have when we parent are we need to have a goal and we need to have a plan. Those 2 things are very important. A great parent will always help their kids to get on the right path. Today, popular media, social media, other parents will tell you there is no such thing as the right path. Whatever makes your kid happy is okay. You do you. Find your truth. The problem with this kind of thinking is sin. It makes us choose the wrong path. I promise you, if given the freedom, we will always find sin much faster than we find righteousness. Children always choose the wrong path. You don't believe me? Well, let me tell you this. About 8 months ago, Mosaic Kids Academy moved into this building, which is an incredible thing. It's our in-house preschool. So if you have preschool age kids, feel free to check out Mosaic Kids Academy. But with Mosaic Kids Academy, the playground is actually right outside of the window of my office. So what that means for me is that I get a live show every single day. And this is one of the most entertaining things. If you want to see preschoolers playing on the playground and you want to understand what sin is, talk to me. You can come hang out in my office. It's like the Animal Planet. You're like, I cannot believe that kid just did that. Let's see what he does next, right? Super entertaining. Because we are all naturally drawn to sin. Mankind is going to choose sin. But as parents, we need to lead our kids away from sin and onto the right path. Proverbs 22 says it this way: train up a child in the way he should go. Even when he is old, he will not depart from it. I want you all to notice that this really speaks of intentionality. This is somebody who has a plan and a reason and a purpose. A trainer always knows what to do to get the right results. If you have a personal trainer, they will tell you what exercises to do. They will tell you what food to eat. They will tell you how much and how often to do it in order to get the results that you need. That's a personal trainer. Now, as parents, we are called to be personal spiritual trainers for our kids. Parents are called to be personal trainers of our kids. Parents train their kids in all sorts of things already. We hire tutors so that our kids get good grades. We put our kids on a team with a good coach so that their team would be good or the kid would be good. We hang out with our kids. We help them with their homework. We go out back, we throw balls with them, and we shoot baskets with them so they can become better. We train our kids already. So we should also be training our kids in a spiritual way. There is a right way and a wrong way to go. There is something known as an absolute truth. Now, the Bible is not saying that all children should look the same. That does not mean that you have to homeschool your kids. You do not have to only listen to Christian music. You don't have to make your own clothes or get really awkward haircuts. Our job is to pass on the values that we see in the Bible. When we look at Proverbs 22 again, this verse actually can carry quite a bit of shame. For those of us who have raised kids who have departed completely from the church, that's hard. And it can be dangerous to think that if my kid isn't saved, that's all my fault. But I want you to know that this is a proverb. It's not a universal truth. Maybe you've heard the saying, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. This is just wise advice. If I eat lots of fruits and vegetables, I'm probably going to be healthier than if I eat a bunch of junk food. But does that mean I'll never get cancer? No. This is just wise advice. So looking at this proverb, it's saying that if you are more intentional about the way you are raising up your kid, the more likely it is that your kid will not depart from Jesus. I want you to ask yourself, what is the purpose of my parenting? Great parents guide their kids to the right path, but Christian parents help their kids to pursue God. Remember, every parent has goals like get good grades or be a great athlete or just to be happy. These are all good things. But that is not the goal of a Christian parent. You are doing everything you can to help your kids pursue God. And that's not my kids have some religion in their life. It's not my kids go to church from time to time. It's not that my kids plug in to Mosaic kids or Mosaic students. Our ultimate goal as a Christian parent is to raise up kids who will love Jesus and who will take over the ministry one day. So before I jump into kind of how to develop a plan, I want to help you all by sharing a few of my goals as a parent. So I have 3 big goals that I hope you may adopt yourself one day. My first goal is that my kids have placed their trust in Jesus. This means that I have to share the gospel with them. My number 1 priority is that my children are saved, that my children know Jesus on a personal level. That is my number 1 goal. Their salvation is more important to me than any other aspect of their life. When I get to heaven one day, I want my children to be there. I want to tell you that if your kids are in Mosaic Kids right now, they hear about Jesus every single week. But they should be hearing about Jesus from you too. And if you don't know how to teach your kids or how to talk to your kids about Jesus, please come talk to me. I'd love to help you to navigate that conversation. I love having those conversations with parents and kids. And if you have a teen, Mike loves to have those conversations as well. Believe it or not, we actually have curriculum that is designed to partner with you as parents. Our curriculum comes with a free app. So when your kids leave here, you can look at that and you can not only know what's going on back in Mosaic Kids, but it will give you specific questions that you can ask your kids that will reinforce the ideologies that are being taught in Mosaic Kids. Maybe some of you have ever had a conversation that kind of sounds like this. Hey, what did you learn in Mosaic Kids today? I don't know. That sounds like the end of a conversation, but we equip you with specific questions. I know some of us are just really glad that the kid doesn't turn around back and say, what did you learn? And then you're like, hey, is that a McDonald's? So we want to partner with you. We want to help you to be more intentional. If your parents, or if you are a parent of a teenager, we actually have a separate app that will help you to navigate the really hard conversations. Conversations about suicide and self-harm, conversations about pornography, about bullying, about self-image, about death, about identity. So after my kids have accepted Jesus, and I know that they're saved, or I believe that they are saved, it is my next goal that my kids learn what it means to follow Jesus. We need to teach our kids what it means to follow Jesus. That means they need to learn how to read the Bible, how to pray, how to serve, how to give, how to be humble. And the first place we learn about life is at home with our parents. The things we learn as a kid have long-lasting effects on us. Some of that's good, some of it's not. But we have a big role in our children's upbringing. And that means that it affects how we look at our relationships. It affects how we parent. It affects how we fight, how we argue, and it affects how we forgive. And this is also where faith begins. We see what our parents' priorities are when it comes to Jesus. It's a funny thing just how much our kids are watching and how much they are learning, even the stuff that we don't want them to learn. When I was a kid growing up, my mom used to say, do as I say, not as I do. It didn't work out for her either. Our kids notice when we show up to church only when it's convenient. Our kids see when we slip in the back late or when we leave early. Our kids understand when we don't act the way Jesus tells us to act. In Mosaic Kids, we have a memory verse every month, and this month it's Philippians 2:3. And so this past week, my wife was talking to my son, and she said to him, "I'm so proud of how well you are reading." And my son says to my wife, Philippians 2:3 says, "Do not be proud." Apparently, I'm raising up my kids to use the Bible against me. But it's kind of cool to see that he's putting that somewhere, even if he took that verse out of context, even if it didn't mean what he thought it did, but it's still pretty cool. And if we're not careful, our kids will learn the wrong thing about Jesus. They might learn that Jesus only hangs out at church, not at my house. They might learn that Jesus is that guy who wants all the fun stuff in the world to not be there. And then they might start to resent Jesus, and they might realize that Jesus is no one that I want to be a part of because, honestly, my parents don't want him either. But if church is our priority, if we pray with our kids, if we read the Bible with our kids, then church, Jesus, Christianity, religion becomes a part of our family culture. And family culture is something that follows our children into their adulthood. My last goal is that my kids learn how to teach others about Jesus. Now, this is probably the hardest one. I think that receiving salvation is important, but it's important for us to talk to others about Jesus too. If we truly believe in Jesus, then we want others to know about him too. And that means that we need to also be teaching our kids about how to have those conversations. Conversations with their friends, with their loved ones, with their family who don't know Jesus. I know a ton of adults who struggle with this, who struggle with evangelism. It's funny, but kids don't as much. Do you know that we often have kids who show up to Mosaic Kids because their friend invited them? I think that's awesome. Do you know that we have adults who come to church because their kid won't stop talking about going to church, and they beg them and annoy them until they show up? I think that's even cooler. I think it's awesome that we have a culture where our kids are inviting people to church because they want to be here. I think we could do that too. And if that's you, if you're one of those people who struggles with talking about your faith, who struggles with how to evangelize, pull that Connect card out in front of you, write your name on it, and write, "I need help, Pastor Greg." I promise you, he will reach out and he will help you. That is his job. His job is to help you to be able to disciple other people. So, if we want our faith culture, our faith, to bleed into that family culture, we should be doing a couple of things. The first thing is to model this with your own life. Start with your relationship with Jesus. If you don't have a relationship with Jesus yet, now's a good time to start. If you don't know, we cannot have a relationship with God because we have something in our life called sin. And Jesus came to this world, and he lived a perfect life, and he died a sinner's death on the cross so that we do not have to suffer the penalty of sin. Jesus' death on the cross made it possible for us to have a relationship with the creator of the universe. And it doesn't take much for us to be saved. All we have to do is confess with our mouth and believe in our hearts that Jesus is Lord, and we too can be saved. And if you don't have a relationship with Jesus yet, I'd love to talk to you. You can write your name on that card and I can reach out, or you can just come up and talk to me. I'd love to have that conversation. But after you have a relationship with Jesus, there should be a marked difference in your life. There should be things that come out of you. There should be actions in your life that demonstrate that you love Jesus. You should be growing in your faith. You should be becoming more mature. Now, if that's a slow process for you, I totally understand. That was me too. But there are some things that you can practice in your life that we call spiritual disciplines that can actually help you to grow your relationship with Jesus and to become more spiritually mature. And those spiritual disciplines are things that not only we should be practicing as adults, but we should be demonstrating them to our children. And I'm talking about things like reading the Bible together. I'm talking about praying together, praying in front of your kids, praying with your kids. And I'm not talking about just dinner time. I'm talking about other times throughout the day when we are intentionally praying with our kids. I have one daughter who I believe has a spiritual gift of prayer. It's a pretty awesome thing when there's somebody who's just off in the house, maybe they're in a bad mood, or somebody who's sick in our house. My daughter, who's only 8 years old, will come up and she will say, can I pray for you? That kind of hurts a little bit because I'm a pastor and that's not my immediate reaction. I don't naturally pray for people, but my wife and I pray, and I think she picked up a thing or two along the way. And I do think that she's probably going to be better at prayer than I am, not far from now. And I think that that's awesome. And the way that we read the Bible together and that we really connect with God in front of our kids, I think that that's an incredible thing. But we also need to show our kids what godly living looks like by the way you treat the lost and the hurting, by the way you are generous, by the way you treat each other, by the way you talk about each other. When you and your spouse argue, what are your kids learning? I do marital and premarital counseling here. So when I do that, I always ask the question, how did your parents fight? And I always get one of two answers. The first answer is my favorite is, oh, it was wild, right? It was really loud. Sometimes there'd be throwing stuff, definitely yelling. And the second answer is almost as good, is, oh, my parents didn't fight. Really? Your parents never fought? And they were married for 25 years? Never had an argument in the entire 25 years? So the thing is that what they were doing is they're taking the arguments behind closed doors. And for whatever reason, we as Christians believe that our kids should never see us divided. But the truth is that we learn our conflict, we learn how to fight with our spouse from our parents. We probably fight the same way either mom or dad fought. And those are deep roots. So if you are arguing in a healthy way, but you're only doing it behind closed doors, that argument is not helping your kids. When we argue in a healthy way in front of our kids, then our kids are learning what healthy conflict looks like. Now, if you have no idea what healthy conflict is, that's okay. I'll tell you, I didn't either. Last week, we had a peacemaking class where we had a group of people who came in, and we spent about 6 or 7 hours learning about how to honor God through conflict. And those people are now experts in conflict. And I would love to introduce you to one of them. or I'd love to help you myself. Conflict is super important. But we also need to model serving in our life. The discipline of serving is one of the most rewarding spiritual disciplines that I have ever experienced in my life. The most spiritual growth that I've ever experienced in my life came from serving and plugging into a group. A group held me accountable and taught me things, but serving, I got to witness as people came to Christ while I was humbly helping them. It was not me who brought them to Christ. Chances are I was probably holding their baby or changing a dirty diaper. But serving will help you to grow closer to the Lord. If you are not serving, now's the time. Mosaic Kids is always in need of people. Our kids are back there being discipled every single week, and honestly, we lose volunteers from time to time. People move, especially during the summer, and we're short. If you want to talk about a ministry that's really, really in need, Mosaic Students is really in need. I think we have a total. So each week we have about 30 middle schoolers, 30 high schoolers who show up on in two different services, and combined 5 volunteers. We need people. So I'm going to challenge you today. I'm challenging you right now to stop making church a spectator sport. It's time to get in the game. Jesus wants us to serve one another. Pull out that Connect card in front of you. Write your name on it. Check the box, I want to serve, and I promise we'll reach out this week. We want you to get plugged in. You're going to grow more than anybody you serve. I promise you that. What's cool is that in Mosaic Kids and Mosaic Students 2 weeks ago, we baptized 3 kids and 3 students. And any person who serves in Mosaic Kids and Mosaic Students can say these words: God used me to make a difference in somebody's life. And if you're not serving, you cannot say those words. This is an incredible opportunity. If you're ready to stop being a spectator, check that box. Drop it in the offering. The next thing is to teach them to do the same. There is good news. No matter how long you've been parenting, no matter how late in the game you are, there's always time to start parenting with a purpose. Even David, who was an absentee father, made a change at the end of his life. 1 Kings chapter 2. He called Solomon in and he said, I am about to go the way of all the earth. That means he's about to die. And he says, be strong and show yourself a man. Now that's an interesting phrase. Show yourself a man. What does he mean by that? Well, David goes on, he says, and keep the charge of the Lord your God, walking in his ways and keeping his statutes, his commandments, his rules, and his testimonies, as is written in the law of Moses, that you may prosper in all that you do and wherever you turn. God has told us a way to live. So follow God, do what God has told you to, and you will have a prosperous life. Jesus echoes the same thing in John chapter 10. He says, the thief's purpose is to steal and kill and destroy, but my purpose is to give them a rich and satisfying life. A rich and satisfying life. That promise is for you. You get to have a rich and satisfying life if you trust in Jesus. And that promise is for your kids and their kids and their kids. A rich and satisfying life that comes through Jesus Christ, but all you have to do is trust in Jesus. And if we're able to parent with a purpose, where we have a goal and we have a plan to get there, and if we're able to model Jesus' love to our kids and to teach them how to do the same, then our families will stay together, for better or for worse. Will you pray with me?